Hey everyone, how's it going? Welcome back to the weekly watch list video brought to you by DFU. That's a platform that I'm currently using here on your screen, and I would highly recommend checking out the link down below in the description, as well as dfu.com to learn more about the product, the screener, watch list management, alert management, and also our future roadmap. We've got a lot of exciting features coming out very soon. So with that, let's run through my wider list for this week. Obviously, on a day, I'll be focusing on kind of 3 to 5 names that have the most promising setups for that day. But I like to take a look at kind of, a list of, 10 to 20 names. Here we've got 21 here that are showing a lot of promise and potentially actionable for this upcoming trading week. So with that said, let's run through these names in order here and start with IMGN. So this is a biotech. This group continues to perform extremely well. We've got the highest volume ever edge here present, and then it pushed through and then saw a tightening in range and kind of some tight action here on a decline in volume. So I'm basically watching for a push higher on volume, breaking through around the 14 level and basically watching for, a lot of demand to come in. Definitely could be a little bit early. We'll have to see whether, undercuts this level. And if it does, it would definitely need a little bit more time, more of a base, and maybe let that 21 EMA catch up to price. But right now I'm watching for an immediate push through, showing that there's follow on demand here with this name. You can see there's not the most promising fundamentals here. There's a little bit of growth, but you can see it's still unprofitable and revenues aren't superb either. So there's more a play on the highest volume edge on the charts. Moving on, we've got Arlo. Fresh breakout here on decent volume, not as high as this day right here, but I'm watching for either tight consolidation to push through this high volume close and immediate traction here. And you can see it's pushing up the right-hand side, still a ways to all-time highs, but very promising price and volume action, very strong price and volume action. You can see on this day, it was up 27.12%. You can see it's just turning profitable here. Revenue growth isn't great, or supposed to be great for the next two earnings, but you can see it's supposed to progress from that point on. And in DFU, these grayed out numbers, or these quarters, are the future estimates, and then you can see the reported numbers here over to the left-hand side and see how it performs. I like to focus on kind of the future expected growth because that's really what the stock is trading off of. Moving on, we've got CELH, which was another recent earnings gapper. Really nice action on huge volume, strong close as well. Nice inside day. Then we tried to push higher. The market wasn't too hot on Friday, and we did finish pretty much near the lows, but we're holding above this HBC. So I'm watching for a tightening into that key level or just a push higher on a short-term time frame, but definitely a name I'll be watching. You can see acceleration is expected in terms of earnings and also very strong revenue growth as well. This bar right here means that earnings is expected to accelerate, meaning this growth number is higher than this one, and this one is higher than this one for at least 2 quarters. So we've got acceleration over 3 quarters, and this just kind of is a quick visual indicator that we are supposed to see really strong acceleration in this key metric. LEGN, another biotech name, strong push up the right-hand side, consolidation. It's right at this prior pivot around 70. Nice tight inside day on Friday and potentially actionable on a breakout from an inside day and up setup as a part of the larger setup, which is a strong push higher, consolidation, and then basically looking for a breakout on volume through these highs right here. Nice outside day on this day, oops reversal as well. This was definitely a potential entry point. Then inside day and up, and then 2 tight days, so very constructive action. If it undercuts these lows, that would tell me that it needs longer to consolidate. Maybe it needs that 21 EMA to catch up to price a little bit more, and even that 50 SMA to catch up and form a more substantial base. But definitely a lot of momentum in this name, but keep an eye on this because it is a biotech. These have a little bit more risk. Shopify, another recent earnings gapper, pushed higher, now pulling back. I'm basically watching for a U-turn to form and basically looking for an entry point on a reversal or a breakthrough, a downward trend line, or a horizontal pivot if it does form. Ideally, we get an inside day here, and then you could use this high, that high of that day as a clear pivot point. But maybe it does go back and retest at 21 EMA, but a potential start of a new stage 2 uptrend as it broke through this prior pivot. Moving on, we've got ARWR, very strong action off these lows. You can see these gaps. Gaps equal power and nice volume accompanying that. And you can see it pushed higher, pulled back, went sideways, undercut those lows, and then had a very strong close here on Friday. So watching for a push through this high and a resumption of this trend above the 21 EMA. We're right at a clear kind of higher time frame key level around 41 or so, and that could potentially start a new stage 2 uptrend if we can push through this high on volume. You can see it was rejected here on this day, but we'll have to see whether it forms out a little bit of a handle and then it manages to break through that level. Moving on to MAXN, I mentioned this a little bit in yesterday's stock market outlook video, but there's definitely a little bit of a catalyst here with some potential credits, tax credits here with the solar names. Really nice action on this day along with FSLR, and you can see a nice breakout on volume. And then it wasn't able to push higher on this day. The overall market was weak, but I'm watching basically for tight consolidation or a retest of that HVC on a decline in volume, and then a push higher and kind of reignition of this potential start of momentum. So we'll have to see what happens with this name, but definitely a promising IPO that you should have on your radar, potentially starting a longer term move up the right hand side of its institutional due diligence phase. Moving on, we've got DKNG also in a similar kind of a longer term consolidation, potentially starting a new stage 2 uptrend. We did have a gap up here. Now it's kind of going sideways, watching for a reversal higher, a breakthrough this high, but maybe it does need that 21 EMA to kind of catch up to price, maybe form a tight pivot versus that level. That could be actionable as well, or you can definitely draw a downward trend line through these highs and use that as your entry signal. But nice breakout from this base, and we'll have to see whether it can really start a multi-month move here from this longer term bottoming formation. CMG, a recent earnings gapper going sideways, watching for a breakthrough here, these highs on high volume. You don't have the best bar here on Friday, but the overall market was weak. But we'll have to see whether you can push higher or if it does need a little bit more time and need maybe a 21 EMA retest. We'll just have to wait and see what happens. EXAS, nice gap up here from this base. This has been on my radar a few times here during this consolidation. It's finally pushed through, and now it's going kind of tight over 2 straight days. So you could watch for a breakthrough these highs around 80 and want to see volume coming in and basically ideally get at a profit right away and push higher out of this base. We are a little bit short-term extended from the 21 EMA, so maybe it does need a little bit more time to base and maybe even need a retest of this prior pivot area, but we'll just have to wait and see what happens. Ideally, we get immediate momentum and immediate traction off these lows, and we can start a longer-term trend, at least a multi-week trend, ideally from this name. SNOW, Snowflake, you can see is forming a bottoming base here, potential restart of a stage 2 uptrend if it can push higher and break through this level on volume. We've got a nice push higher. You've got a gap up and go, then a few days of traction, and now it's going sideways or down just slightly for 2 straight days. So basically watching for a little bit more consolidation and then a resumption of this momentum, this move higher. So definitely watching here. You've got nice growth expected in terms of earnings and sales. You can see acceleration in terms of earnings currently, and revenue growth is very strong as well. And this is kind of within that kind of AI data theme. So that's kind of why I've got it on my radar. AMAM, definitely the most speculative name on this list. This is another biotech pharma company. Very nice chart pattern, really strong off these lows, forming out a consolidation. Tight action here, drift lower, upside reversal here on Friday off the 21 EMA, and basically watching for a break through this pivot. And ideally, you're at a profit right away. You can set stops to even and just kind of let it run. Definitely move over those stops and be protective of profits in this name if you do decide to trade it, because these can reverse pretty hard. You can see on this day it was down 15%. So know your area of competence. If this isn't the type of name that you have success with, don't trade it. I just know a few people like those kind of high flyer momentum names. So this is definitely an idea for you kind of folks. AXSM pushing higher here right at the top of this prior base, forming a little bit of a handle here, tightness the past 4 days, and basically watching for a push higher on volume and breakout from this handle. Not much to say in terms of earnings and sales growth. We got a little bit of nice revenue growth here. Earnings, you can see it's not profitable just yet. There's another biotech, so keep that in mind. But overall, just a nice base here. And you can see it's part of a longer term consolidation. So we'll have to see whether it can really break out here and have a nice run. In the past, you can see after it's broken out of bases, it runs for a few days and then doesn't quite go anywhere. So we'll have to see whether it can break character a little bit and start a multi-week, multi-month move. Next up, we've got CHDN, push higher and then very tight now these past 3-4 days, basically watching for a break through these highs on volume. But if it does break lower, keep in mind that it might need a retest of that 21 EMA, or at least a longer term consolidation, or maybe just a shakeout. But we'll have to see what happens, and I'm watching for breakthrough these levels, these highs on volume. ISRG, this has been on my list for the past few weeks, watching for our nice breakout from this consolidation. We've got a little bit of move on Friday, no volume supporting just yet, so I definitely want to see that come in. You can see 2 wicks here near this level, so I definitely want to see a strong, confident close, and that would give me confidence that it could potentially move higher here and make its way towards those all-time highs. FSLR, another name, solar name that's acting well. You can see a very strong bar here on huge volume. Like I said, there's a little bit of catalyst here with some potential tax credits. So we'll have to see what happens here. And if anybody knows more about that, let me know down below in the comment section. I'd love to read up on that if you got an article. But basically watching for short-term consolidation or just continue momentum, maybe a retest and shakeout to this prior area around 221, and then an intraday setup as it reverses back higher and finishes strong. Moving on, we've got ONON, basically watching for a breakout through 3360 or an undercut and reclaim of that 21 EMA and these prior lows. We'll have to see what happens here. A lot of eyes on this one, so keep that in mind, but really nice push on volume. I've heard mixed things about the shoes themselves, but the stock is showing the signs of a potential leader. It's making its way up the right-hand side of its first longer-term primary base. DXCOM, you can see forming out a base here. The name is covered in the recording here, but this is DXCOM DXCM, and Pod, which is kind of its sister stock, already broke out, but this is acting pretty well. Tight inside day on Friday, watching for push through these highs on volume. I like how it's compressing versus the 21 EMA. Duolingo, push higher on volume, retaking the moving averages. It did have earnings, now drifting lower for 2 straight days. Basically watching for reversal higher and breakout through the kind of 147.15 level. This is also an early pivot, and you could also use, this high if you're pretty aggressive or an intraday setup. Moving on, we've got AMD, similar type action to Duolingo, very strong, breaking back through the moving averages, now declining a little bit, watching for a handle to form and for basically a tight setup to emerge here to basically form a pivot and allow for a trade where you can manage risk really easily. Lastly, we've got MELI, a lot of the kind of, how do I say this, the online, retail looked pretty good. We've got Amazon acting well, of course, SC as well, decent looking chart, and MELI is similar, very nice action, forming a base off these lows. This is kind of the second consolidation here, and basically watching for a push higher on volume, breaking out of this consolidation area around 1300 and then pushing through 13,039. So that's pretty much a run through of my wider list for this week. Let me know your thoughts on these names. Let me know 1 or 2 names that you're watching that aren't on this list down below in the comment section. There's definitely a lot out there, so I'm curious what you guys are watching. And if you did enjoy this video and my analysis and found it helpful, please go ahead and leave a like down below. It helps me out immensely. And of course, subscribe if you want to see more videos just like this one every single week. And with that, thanks again for tuning in, and I'll see you guys in future videos. Take care.